She works at the Mafia's club to help her sick mom unaware. The Mafia boss watches her every night. The Halcyon Vault wasn't a club. It was a heartbeat thrumming beneath the concrete skin of Harrow Ridge. Tucked away in the city's rain-slicked port district, it breathed money and secrecy. For Naya Calder, it breathed survival. She stood behind the long mahogany bar, polished to a dark mirror, and mentally tallied the night's take against the rising cost of her mother's existence. Each shift was a line item, every poured drink a fraction of a vial, all funneling toward the ether clinic and the experimental biologics keeping Marisol Calder's immune system from tearing itself apart. Med school felt like another life, a ghost standing behind her whispering about cellular biology while she managed liquor inventory and the subtle, dangerous currents of the floor. The air inside the vault was thick enough to chew, a heavy perfume of expensive gin, cold metal, and the citrus-sharp tang of desperation. Dark house music pulsed from hidden speakers, a low, hypnotic rhythm that vibrated in Naya's bones. Her gaze swept the floor, a constant, practiced scan that missed nothing. It was a reflex honed by 2 years in this place. She saw the new doorman, Jax, being relieved 20 minutes early. She saw the faint red flicker of the security camera in corner 3, blinking just slightly off its usual 2-second delay. She saw a VIP in the corner booth, a man whose laughter was too loud, adjusting a strip of dark leather tape on his wrist. Hiding an ink stain Naya knew was the mark of the Arcan Syndicate. Her phone vibrated silently in her apron pocket. A single, sterile text message from the clinic's billing department. She didn't need to open it fully. The preview line was enough. The new biologic infusion price had just jumped by 15%. A cold fist clenched in Naya's stomach. 15%. That was 3 extra shifts. That was her grocery money and the electric bill. A customer waved, a flash of rings and entitlement. Naya's face snapped into a smile, a mask she wore as expertly as her black uniform. "Right away, sir," she said, her voice smooth, betraying nothing of the panic clawing at her throat. She moved, her hands steady as she grabbed a chilled glass, the ice clinking like tiny, breaking bones. She swallowed the panic, pushing it down deep where it could fuel the rest of her night. Then the air changed. It wasn't a sound. It was a pressure drop. The rumors that had been slipping through the staff corridors like smoke had just solidified. Soren Valente was back. The name was never spoken loudly in the Halcyon Vault. He was the owner, the shadow behind the Valente Maritime Holdings conglomerate that owned half the docks, and the absolute unseen gravity that held this place together. He'd been overseas for months, a euphemism that could mean anything from negotiating in Singapore to sinking a rival's cargo in the mid-Atlantic. His return rippled through the room instantly. The DJ, sensing the shift without a word spoken, bled the hard-edged house track into something deeper, smoother, more controlled. Security, who had been relaxed at the periphery, suddenly seemed to multiply, their suits blending into the shadows, their presence a solid wall. The ambient chatter of the crowd dipped by half a decibel. Milo, the head of security and Naya's nominal boss, appeared at her elbow. His face was granite. "Calder, you're taking the strong room." Naya froze, the shaker cold in her hand. "Milo, I'm running the bar. Rhea is scheduled for the strong room." "Rhea's hands are shaking," Milo said, his voice flat. "He's back. He's in the nest. He wants service. You're the only one I trust not to spill." The strong room, the subterranean VIP lounge built into the old bank vault beneath the club, reserved for Valente and his inner circle. Naya actively avoided it. She managed the floor. She handled the money. She kept the peace. But she stayed away from the center of power. Power in Harrow Ridge meant obligation. Obligation meant debt. And debt was a chain she couldn't afford. "Milo," she started, but he was already gone. Cursing silently, she wiped her hands, reset her expression, and prepared a silver tray with the club's most expensive single malt. As she turned, she caught her own reflection in the massive two-way mirror that backed the bar. Her eyes were tired. From the shadowed balcony high above the main floor, the one the staff called the nest, Soren Valente watched her. He saw the flicker of defiance in her posture before she smoothed it away. He saw the way her gaze had tracked the Arcan-linked VIP. He watched the subtle tightening of her jaw when Milo gave her the order, and the professional calm that replaced it. He had been watching her for 6 months. Not just watching, studying. He knew she took her break at 10:42 p.m. He knew she checked the inventory logs twice, once before opening and once at midnight. He knew she breathed in slowly, counting to 5, when a customer put his hand on a new waitress's lower back, and he knew how she would intercept. Her body language open but immovable. A smile on her face and steel in her voice. He had seen her walk a drunk 300-pound man out the front door using only words and a strategically applied grip on his elbow. Naya Calder was a finely tuned instrument, and he was a man who appreciated precision. She disappeared with the tray, descending the velvet-roped stairs to the strong room. The next hour was a blur of thick cigar smoke, low voices discussing shipping routes, and the feeling of eyes on her skin. She kept her own eyes down, served the drinks, and left as quickly as protocol allowed. She returned to the relative sanity of the main bar just before 2 o'clock, her shift nearly over. The 15% price hike was screaming in her head again. She was drying a glass when a server placed a single, elegant martini on the bar mat in front of her. "I didn't order this, Cale," she said. "Didn't come from me," Cale whispered, already backing away. "It just appeared." The drink was perfect, ice cold, 3 olives. Resting beside its base was a black card, heavier than paper, with the texture of shark skin, embossed in stark, clean letters were 4 words. The 13th floor, 2 o'clock. Naya looked at the clock. It was 1:58 a.m. She looked around the bar, the balconies, the floor. No one met her gaze. No one claimed the drink. The card felt cold in her hand. The private elevator to the 13th floor was a silent, steel box. It didn't hum or click. It just rose, compressing the air and Naya's nerves with it. The doors opened not onto a hallway, but directly into the office. It was vast and dark. The far wall was a single sheet of glass overlooking the rain-lashed lights of Harrow Ridge Harbor. There was no art, no clutter, no personal effects, just a desk that looked like a slab of polished shadow, and, set into the steel wall by the door, a single, deep-cut letter. Soren Valente was not sitting behind the desk. He was standing by the window, a silhouette against the city, holding a glass of what looked like water. He turned, and the shadows seemed to detach from him, rather than him stepping out of them. He was younger than the rumors suggested, his suit impeccably tailored, his presence utterly calm. But it was his eyes that held the room. They were a flat, steel gray, and when they landed on her, Naya felt like a compass needle finding magnetic north. It wasn't a physical threat, it was a gravitational pull. "Miss Calder," he said. His voice was low, uninflected, yet it filled the enormous space. "Thank you for coming. Please." He gestured not to a chair, but to the room at large. "Your card didn't feel like an invitation," Naya said, her hands clasped tightly at her waist. She would not show fear. She would not show weakness. "It was a request." He took a sip of water. "I have a file. On August 10th, 2 clients in booth 7 became disruptive over a spilled drink. Security was not called. You handled it in 90 seconds, ending with both men apologizing and paying their tab." Naya's blood went cold. "On September 3rd, he continued, walking slowly toward the desk but not sitting. "You left your shift at 2:04 a.m. You spotted a tail on the corner of Wharf Street. You ducked into the all-night market, exited through the rear delivery door, and took the elevated footbridge home, changing your route." A cold, sharp anger, clean as glass, cut through her. "You've been watching me. You've been following me." "I have everyone watching," Soren said, his gaze unwavering. "You are the only one who has ever noticed. You are the only one who reacts not with fear, but with strategy." He tapped a sleek, integrated screen on his desk. A single file opened. I have a new position, safety coordinator. It's a floor management title, but the responsibilities are specific. I need you to read the room for me, Miss Calder, the way you read it for yourself. I need you to see the things my security team, with all their hardware, misses. I'm a bartender, Mr. Valente, not a spy. You were a medical student, he corrected her gently. Top 5% of your class, you're trained in diagnostics, observing symptoms, looking for the anomaly. That is what I want. That is what I am willing to pay for. He named a number. It was exactly double her current salary, plus tips. Naya's breath hitched. It was enough. It was more than enough. And, he added, as if sensing her calculation, the position comes with my personal executive health coverage. It extends to the immediate family. All expenses at the ether clinic, for example, would be covered, fully effective tomorrow. The text message, the 15% price hike, it was a test, a squeeze, to see how she would react, to make her desperate. The anger turned white-hot. You did that. You threatened my mother's treatment. For the first time, a flicker of something surprised respect crossed his face. No, the hospital board did that. I simply read the minutes of their meeting, but the timing is convenient. Naya stared at him, her mind racing. This was a cage, gilded and beautiful, but a cage. He was offering her the keys to her mother's life, but the price was her own. And in return, I'm yours. I watch who you say. I report what I see. My privacy is gone. Your privacy is a luxury you have already lost, he said, not unkindly. You just didn't know who was buying it. I'm offering you a contract. You watch my interests. I will secure your mother's. I want terms, Naya said, her voice shaking slightly but gaining strength. This isn't a job. It's a bargain. So we bargain. My personal life, my home, my phone, they are off limits. You get my eyes inside the vault, nothing more. You said you spotted the Arcan mark on the VIP tonight. He stated, it wasn't a question. Naya was stunned. How, the mirror? The mirror. They are my problem. Miss Calder, a rival organization. They've infiltrated the vault. They're using my port manifests to siphon products from my warehouses. They're moving contraband in containers marked as musical instruments. He needed her. This wasn't just a test. He was blind inside his own fortress. My terms, Naya repeated, pressing her advantage. I will not be your asset outside this building, and I want the right to refuse. If you ask me to do something that crosses a line, I can say no, without penalty, without my mother's care being used as leverage. Soren Valente looked at her for a long, silent moment. The keening of the city's distant sirens was the only sound. Then he nodded. He turned to the desk, picked up a pen, and pulled a single sheet of paper from a drawer. He wrote, his handwriting fast and sharp. An addendum to your employment contract, he said, sliding it across the desk. Naya read it. Personal communications and residences of N. Calder are non-logged. Employee retains right of refusal on morally ambiguous tasks. He had signed it. Naya looked from the paper to his face. She was trapped, but he had just handed her the rules of her own confinement. She thought of her mother. She thought of the 15%. I accept, she said. She turned and walked to the elevator, her back straight. She didn't run. She didn't look back. Her hand was on the button when his voice, quiet as a held breath, crossed the room. Miss Calder, I watch to protect, not to possess. The steel doors slid shut, sealing her in with her new reality. Naya's world recalibrated, the Halcyon Vault, once a sea of faces and noise, sharpened into a grid of data points. Her training was fast, brutal, and practical. Milo Hawk, the security head, didn't teach her theory, he taught her reality. 3 quick flashes from the main bar light. He grunted, pointing to the hidden LED. Internal threat, staff compromised. 2 flashes, external, police arrival. 1 long, steady pulse means fire or flood. Get out. She learned to read the micro-tells of the room. Her medical training resurfaced, repurposed. She was no longer diagnosing illnesses. She was diagnosing intentions. A server who polished an already clean glass was nervous. Likely holding a guest whose laughter was half a second too fast was trying too hard to blend. She learned the subtle chemical traces of the trade. The faint acetone smell meant someone had cleaned data from a counterfeit card. A bleach overtone in a private room meant a blood spill, not spilled wine. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. Usually the slowest night, a new waiter, barely 20, was assigned to the strong room. Naya, watching from the floor's main hub, noted his movements. He was clumsy. But more than that, he was specific. He avoided one of the brushed steel ice buckets, favoring the other two. When Naya went down to check inventory, she picked up the bucket he'd ignored. It was heavier, not by much, just an ounce. She ran her fingers under the thick, insulated rim. A small strip of black electrical tape beneath it, nestled in a tiny cutout in the foam, was a transmitter. It was no bigger than a grain of rice. She brought it to Milo, and he didn't look surprised, just angry. He handed her a small, black wand. "Walk the building," he ordered. The signal was dormant, a tiny electronic heartbeat. Naya walked the service halls, the cellar, the kitchen, nothing. But as she passed the main electrical closet on the ground floor, the wand buzzed faintly. She opened the heavy steel door. It was a chaotic nest of wires and conduits. It took her 20 minutes of following the signal, but she found it. The tiny chip was feeding a low-power signal to a booster, a small, sophisticated piece of hardware spliced directly into the club's main data conduit. It was piggybacking on their own encrypted network, amplifying its signal and routing it to an external IP. The destination Pier 9, Valente Maritime Territory. She presented her findings in the 13th floor office. Soren wasn't there, but his core team was. Milo Hawk leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, radiating impatient energy. Rhea Solis, the chief financial officer, sat at the table, perfectly still, her black hair pulled into a severe bun. She was the ice to Milo's fire, a woman who spoke only in spreadsheets and absolutes. And Cam Lax, the DJ, who was really the head of information. Cam heard everything. Pier 9, Naya said, projecting the data onto the wall screen. That's the dispatch point for the containers marked musical instruments. The signal is live. They're watching our movements. Milo pushed off the wall. "I'll take a team. We'll sanitize the pier." "No," Naya said, surprising herself with her own authority. "They'll know we're on to them. We need to see what they're looking for." Milo and Naya went to the docks an hour before dawn, dressed in dark work clothes. The air was cold and heavy with the smell of diesel and salt water. They watched from the catwalk of a loading crane as the musical instrument containers were staged, as the sun barely grazed the horizon. A dock worker moved a pallet jack, leaving a quick chalk mark on the concrete near the containers, an A bisected by a wavy line. "Arcan," Milo whispered, his voice a low growl. He snapped a high-resolution photo. "That's their pickup confirmation. We have the proof." They brought the images to Soren. He looked at the photo, then at Naya. He gave a single, sharp nod. "Change the routes. All cargo destined for Pier 9 gets diverted to Pier 4. Fill the instrument containers with reclaimed scrap. Let them pick up their garbage. Tonight." The switch was flawless. Archon's retrieval team, working in the dead of night, snagged 3 containers of useless, rusting metal. They lost the trail. The victory was short-lived. Just before 3 a.m., Naya's phone buzzed. It was a security alert. A bright orange glow lit up the southern sky. A fire. A Valente-owned warehouse, old, mostly unused, filled with discontinued textiles, was burning to the ground. It was miles from the docks, a strategic non-asset. The message was clear. It wasn't an attack. It was a warning. "We know you moved the shipment. We can touch you whenever we want." The next day, Naya sat by her mother's bedside at the Ether Clinic. Marisol's color was better. The new medication, fully covered, was working. "I feel lighter, Naya," Marisol murmured, her hand frail in Naya's. "I dreamed I was gardening." Naya pulled out her phone and hit the audio recorder. Tell me about the garden. Mom, the one we had at the old apartment." As her mother spoke, painting pictures of tomatoes and basil, Naya held on to the sound. She was recording a memory, capturing a moment of strength. "This new job, the promotion?" Marisol asked, her eyes fluttering. "It's good they're treating you well." "It's good, Mom," Naya lied, smoothing the blanket. "Just coordinating safety. It's quiet." She listened to the sound of her mother's breathing, still labored, but steadier than it had been in years. That sound was her anchor. She would not let it stop. That night, the atmosphere in the vault was charged. The fire was the whisper on everyone's lips. Morel Quaid, the club's chief sommelier, cornered Naya by the main cellar. Morel was beautiful, sharp as broken glass, and moved with a dancer's predatory grace. She placed a cool hand on Naya's arm. "Naya, darling, you're the talk of the staff," Morel purred, her smile a little too wide. "Climbing the ladder so fast. It must be so intense. Working up on the 13th floor. We will never see you." "It's just work, Morel." Naya gently pulled her arm away. "Oh, I'm sure." Morel leaned closer, her perfume something expensive and heavy, like jasmine and smoke washing over Naya. "He's very particular. Isn't he, Mr. Valente? What exactly does a safety coordinator do for him so late at night?" The question was a scalpel, disguised as gossip. "Inventory checks, fire protocols," Naya said flatly. "Excuse me, I have to check the floor." She left Morel watching her, that painted-on smile never wavering. Late, in the quiet of the 13th floor office, Naya was staring at the official port blueprints, feeling the exhaustion of the long con. She didn't hear Soren approach. He simply appeared at her side, placing a heavy, rolled tube of drafting paper on the desk. She looked up, startled. He tapped the tube. Naya unrolled it. It wasn't a blueprint. It was an old navigational chart of Harrow Ridge Harbor, worn soft at the creases, covered in handwritten annotations, red circles, and faint pencil lines. It was a working map, a personal map. "The schematics show you the harbor as it was designed," Soren said, his voice low. "This shows you how it actually works, the currents, the silt deposits, the forgotten routes." Naya traced a line he had drawn, a channel marked too shallow on the official map, but which he had marked with a depth of 3 meters at high tide. "Trust your instincts, Naya," he said, his steel-gray eyes holding hers. "Trust them more than my schematics." The 13th floor became her new classroom, long after the last customer had stumbled out into the pre-dawn gray. The office, silent and dark, was a stark contrast to the thrumming energy of the club below. Tonight, Soren was teaching her to listen. "The room has a rhythm," he said, his voice a low counterpoint to the distant sound of the cleaning crews 1 floor down. "It's not just the music, it's the lights, the orders, the steps of the servers. People who lie, who are nervous, they break that rhythm." He stood beside her at the great glass window, looking down on the now empty club floor. "Listen, Cam's cleanup set. 4 bars of light, 8 bars of bass. That's the loop. Now, watch." He pointed to a busboy, lingering too long by the VIP booths. "He's off beat. He's looking for something he dropped, or something to steal." Soren moved from the window to the large drafting table that now held his personal, annotated map of the harbor. "It's the same here, on the floor. You learn the rhythm. You spot the break." Naya was exhausted, the adrenaline of the night fading into a dull ache behind her eyes. She leaned over the map, trying to focus on the fine pencil lines. "It's too much. The lights, the music, the people. It's just noise." "It's noise until you find the pattern," he said. He moved to stand behind her, closer than he had ever been. She could feel the ambient heat radiating from his body, a stark contrast to the cold glass at her back. "Your gaze is too wide," he murmured. His hand came up, not touching her, but hovering near her temple as if to frame her vision. "Look here. This channel." He leaned forward, his arm brushing her shoulder as he pointed to the map. Naya's breath caught. His scent was clean, like expensive soap in the cold night air. His fingers settled on the map, and then his other hand gently covered hers, guiding her index finger to trace the route he'd penciled in. His touch was light, professional, but it sent a jolt straight up her arm. It was a simple, instructive gesture, but in the charged silence of the office, at 3 a.m, it felt like a confession. The space between them, once a clearly defined boundary of employer and employee, suddenly felt fragile, forbidden. His words were about logistics, but his body was a betrayal of that calm. Naya pulled her hand back, her composure rattling. "I don't like being managed so closely." She turned to face him, forcing him to take a step back. The moment was broken, but the tension remained, sharp as ozone. "If you've been watching me for so long, you must have seen that I hate being controlled." Soren's gray eyes held hers. There was no apology in them, no defensiveness, just an unsettling, steady observation. I saw a woman who was controlling her own environment perfectly, until she was forced into one she couldn't. So, control this one. Control it within the space you've chosen. It was a challenge, a concession, an order. "We need rules," Naya said, her voice stronger now. This was a negotiation, just like the first one. "My addendum, it's not enough anymore." He nodded once. "Name them." "No touching," she said, the word hanging in the air, electric from the moment that had just passed. Not without asking, not even to point at a map. "Agreed," he said, his voice flat. "No blind tasks. You tell me what I'm walking into. You tell me who I'm watching and why. I'm not your puppet." "You get the intelligence you need to do the job," he countered. "Full transparency isn't always possible." "Enough transparency that I don't end up dead," she snapped. "And the right to refuse. Still, always. The right to walk away." "The right to walk away is always yours." "Naya," he said, using her first name for the first time. It landed with the weight of a thrown stone. But the consequences of walking are real, for both of us. Before she could process that, her phone buzzed. Another text, not from the clinic, from her contact at the hospital's administrative wing. She read it, and the floor dropped out from under her. "What is it?" Soren asked, his voice shifting from employer to something else, something sharper. "At the Ether Clinic," Naya said, her voice hollow. "The board is cutting its experimental funding division. A new corporate sponsor pulled out. My mother's program. It's being terminated in 30 days. All the power plays, the negotiations, the tension, it all evaporated, leaving only the raw, cold panic. She had just set boundaries, and now her entire world was collapsing." Soren was silent for a full 10 seconds. "I will handle it," he said. "I'll become the benefactor. I'll buy the program. It's a simple transaction." Naya looked at him, and the panic was replaced by a surge of defiant fury. "No!" He frowned. "This is not a negotiation. It is a fact. I am securing my assets." "I am not your asset." Naya threw her phone onto the desk. "I am not your property, and my mother will not be your pet project. I will not take that kind of charity from you. I will not be beholden to you in that way." "Then what do you suggest?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "You let her die because of your pride." "No," Naya said, her mind racing, grabbing at threads. "I'll earn it. A different way. A public way." She pointed out the window, toward the lights of the city. "You're a ghost, Mr. Valente. You own half this port, but no one knows what you look like. You have a perception problem. The Arcan Syndicate makes you look like a thug. So, let's fix it." "Go on." "The Vault, Valente Maritime. It sponsors a foundation. Something clean, public, an anti-human trafficking initiative. Tied to the port, it's a legitimate problem, and it's good publicity. It makes you a benefactor, not a warlord. I'll run it. I'll draft the proposal. And the Foundation's first act of goodwill. It fully funds the Ether Clinic's experimental wing. It's not a handout. It's a strategic partnership." He stared at her, the gray eyes analytical, searching. He was seeing her. Truly seeing her for the first time, not as a bartender, not as a diagnostician, as an equal. A slow, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of his mouth. It was so small. Naya almost missed it, but it transformed his face, erasing the coldness and revealing something human. Something almost lonely. "The Glasslight Initiative, he said, the name coming to him as if it had been waiting. Funded by the Valente Group, administered by Naya Calder. Yes, draft the proposal." The elevator ride down was silent. They stood side by side, not touching, but the small, sterile space was suffocatingly intimate. Naya was acutely aware of the sleeve of his suit, a fraction of an inch from her arm. She could hear him breathe a slow, steady rhythm that was just slightly deeper than her own. The air was thick with the unsaid, with the proximity, with the raw want that came from their collision of wills. The doors opened on the ground floor. The lobby was empty, the lights dimmed. Naya stepped out first, forcing her legs to move. She left him in the steel box, letting the doors slide shut on the silent, suffocating tension. The word "wanted" trapped in the air behind her. The launch of the Glasslight Initiative was a curated piece of theater. It was not held in the vault's opulent main room, but in a converted backstage storage area, giving it an air of humble, gritty authenticity. The local press, carefully selected and invited by Cam, sipped sparkling cider and took notes. Naya, composed in a simple navy blue dress, stood at a lectern and spoke about port safety and community outreach. Soren stood at the back of the room, a silent benefactor, his presence lending a heavy, official weight to the proceedings. He was no longer just a shadow. He was a philanthropist. The legal cover was set. Morel Quaid, the sommelier, approached Naya afterward, her smile as bright and hard as a diamond. "Congratulations. Naya, you're a natural." She handed Naya a flute of cider. As their hands brushed, Naya caught a smell. It was sharp, antiseptic, and metallic, iodine. But it wasn't the medical-grade iodine Naya knew from the clinic. It was stronger, specialized. Naya's mind flashed back to her organic chemistry labs. It was the same distinct odor as the potassium iodide compound used as a neutralizing agent, a chemical that could be used to bypass the ammonia sensors in high-capacity refrigeration units, the kind Valente Maritime used in its cold storage warehouses on the docks. Naya looked at Morel's perfectly manicured hand, the faint, acrid smell clinging to her cuticles. Why would the club's wine experts smell like a dockside industrial chemical? The suspicion clicked into place, cold and heavy. Morel was not just a gossip. She was the leak. Naya did not wait. Using the new security protocols Soren had given her, she initiated a random cargo audit at Pier 4, where the diverted shipments were now held. She did not tell Milo. She did not tell Soren. She trusted only her gut. At 4 a.m, under the harsh sodium lights of the dock, she and a trusted security man cracked the seal on one of the containers marked musical instruments. It was not scrap metal this time. It was packed, floor to ceiling, with state-of-the-art dialysis machines. Still in their plastic wrapping, dozens of them. Naya's medical knowledge lit the final fuse. This was never about drugs or guns. Archon was not just moving contraband, they were building infrastructure. They wanted to control the city's hospitals, the clinics. They were going to launder their money through the insurance claims of the sick. She met Soren on the 13th floor as the sky was just beginning to bruise with dawn. She laid out the photos of the dialysis machines. They're targeting the clinics, Soren starting with Ether. He was standing by the great glass window, his back to her, processing the scale of it. When the sound hit, it was not a bang. It was a sharp, supersonic crack followed by a high-pitched hiss. Soren moved faster than she could have believed possible. He grabbed her by the shoulders and threw them both sideways, his body covering hers as they hit the hardwood floor. A split second later, the massive pane of glass where he had been standing exploded inward. A universe of fractured, crystalline glass rained down on the desk, sparkling like deadly stardust in the new morning light. Milo Hawk burst in from the elevator, grunting as he raised his arm to shield his face. He cursed, clutching his shoulder where a long shard of glass had embedded itself in his bicep. The shot had come from the unfinished high-rise across the harbor. A sniper. The attack was a warning, a clear, theatrical statement. Milo, bleeding but furious, retrieved the heavy slug from the far wall. It was custom-loaded. Milo ran the partial prints from the brass casing. The database returned a name, Cassian Pride, the recognized leader of the Arcan Syndicate. Pride, Milo growled, while Naya applied pressure to the wound. He likes to make a performance out of things. He doesn't just kill. He stages a play first. "This ends now," Soren said, his voice terrifyingly calm. He was looking at Naya, his face pale, his eyes fixed on where she had been standing. "I'm moving you, a safe house, out of the city." "No," Naya said, pushing herself up from the floor, glass crunching under her hands. "That's what he wants. He targets what you value. He saw the glass light launch. He thinks I'm your weakness. If I disappear, they win. They know they can control you by threatening me." "He will kill you, Naya." "Not if we're smarter," Naya countered, her fear turning into a cold, sharp focus. "He wants those machines. He thinks I am the bait, so let's use a different bait." She pointed to the shipping manifests. "We set up a new light bait route, a high-value wine shipment, something Morel would know about. We'll publicize the route under the guise of Glasslight Logistics. We make it look like I am personally overseeing it. While they're hitting the wine truck, we move the real cargo, the dialysis machines, using a medical waste disposal route. Cam can fake the logs." The plan worked. 2 nights later, Cam's network lit up with chatter. Arcan's team hit the wine truck on the city's north side, a violent, public takeover. But they found only 300 cases of cheap Merlot. By then, the real equipment was already secured in a subterranean vault beneath the ether clinic. Naya felt a grim, shallow victory. She drove to her mother's apartment complex as the sun set, the adrenaline finally leaving her in a cold, shaking wave. She just wanted to sit in the quiet, to hear Marisol's voice. She let herself into the apartment. It was quiet. Too quiet. "Mom?" The living room was undisturbed, but the air felt wrong. The door to her mother's bedroom was open. The bed was neatly made. Marisol was gone. Naya's heart stopped. She scanned the room, looking for a note, for a sign of struggle. There was nothing. Then she saw it. On the clean, polished surface of the bedside table, placed perfectly in the center, was her mother's favorite silver hair clip, the one Naya had given her last Christmas. It sat alone, gleaming under the lamplight, a silent, terrifying message. Naya's hand was shaking so violently she could barely unlock her phone. The silver hair clip. It felt cold in her palm, a piece of ice, a violation that screamed louder than any alarm. Her thumb missed Soren's name twice before she finally hit the speed dial. It rang once. "Naya." His voice was instant, calm, cutting through the static in her head. "He has her," she whispered, the words fracturing. "My mother. He took her. Soren, they came here and they took her." "Where are you?" "Her apartment, the one I moved her to. He left her hair clip on the table, just sitting there." "Stay there. Lock the door behind you. Do not move. I am 7 minutes away." The line clicked. She didn't know how she passed those 7 minutes. She paced the small living room, from the door to the window, her knuckles white. The rage was a hot, acidic thing beneath the ice of her fear. Cassian Pride hadn't just made a move. He had crossed a sacred line. He had entered her mother's home. A hard, fast knock echoed. Exactly 7 minutes later, it wasn't the sound of a security team. It was sharp, singular. She wrenched the deadbolt back and pulled the door open. Soren Valente stood in the brightly lit hallway, and he was alone. No Milo, no bodyguards. He wore a dark coat, his hair damp from the night air, and his eyes were not the calm, steel gray she knew. They were blazing. He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping the room, cataloging the violation, the silent, awful neatness. He pushed the door shut, and the sound of the lock clicking into place was deafening. "He broke the rules," Soren said. His voice was not loud, but it vibrated with a contained fury she had never heard. "He did this because of me," Naya said, her voice cracking. "Because he thinks I'm yours. Because of that stupid glasslight announcement." The strength that had held her up for days, for years, finally shattered. A violent tremor started in her knees and consumed her. She backed away from him, into the small, dark kitchen, her hand gripping the edge of the counter to keep from falling. Soren followed her, but he stopped just inside the doorway. He didn't rush to comfort her. He didn't offer platitudes. He just stood there, a solid, unmoving presence in the chaos of her terror. Then, slowly, deliberately, he held his hands open at his sides, palms facing her. It was not a command. It was not a gesture of control. It was an offer, a question. "You can come to me, or you can push me away. The choice is yours." That single, quiet act of consent broke through her panic. He wasn't taking charge of her. He was offering a foothold. She took the 2 steps that separated them and walked directly into his chest, her hands fisting the fabric of his expensive coat. His arms came around her, not in a tight, possessive grip, but in a solid, grounding embrace. He was warm, and he was real. She pressed her cheek against his chest, and beneath the fine wool, his heart beat a steady, even rhythm. A metronome in the screaming chaos of her mind. She focused on it. Thump, 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 thump. The shaking in her legs began to slow. He just held her. One hand spread wide on her back, the other gently cradling the back of her head, his chin resting on her hair. "No one," he murmured into her hair, his voice a raw promise, "will ever touch her again." Naya tilted her head back. Her eyes were wet, but the tears hadn't fallen. She looked up into his face. The steel was gone from his gaze, replaced by a raw, unguarded intensity she had never seen. The space between them, measured in heartbeats, became charged with a different kind of energy. The unspoken thing that had been vibrating in the elevator, in the office, was now loud as a scream. His eyes dropped to her mouth, then returned to hers. A silent question. "May I?" Naya gave a single, short nod. It was all the permission he needed. He kissed her. It was slow, tentative at first, a test, just the soft pressure of his lips against hers, a moment of stillness, as if confirming her answer. She didn't pull back. She leaned into it, her hands sliding from his coat up to his shoulders. That was the change. The kiss deepened, moving from shallow reassurance to something profound and searching. His hand slid from her back, cupping her jaw, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. It was not the kiss of a boss or a protector. It was the kiss of a man who had been holding his breath for a very long time. Naya's hands tightened, her fingers winding into the hair at the nape of his neck, pulling him closer, erasing the last fraction of distance they had so carefully maintained. They broke apart, breathless, foreheads resting against each other. The kitchen was too bright, the world too sharp. "Naya," he whispered, his voice rough. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want a plan. She just wanted, for one night, not to be the strategist. She wanted to feel safe. She took his hand, her fingers lacing with his, and led him from the kitchen, past the empty, violated bedroom, and into her own small room at the end of the hall. The clothes were a formality, the layers they had both worn as armor. His tailored coat fell to the floor. Her work shirt, smelling faintly of the vault's gin and citrus, followed. It was not a rushed, frantic act. It was a deliberate, careful undressing. Each button undone, each layer removed, was a silent dismantling of the barriers between them. His hands were steady, respectful. Her touch was hesitant, then confident. When he closed the bedroom door, the latch clicking shut was the sound of the outside world finally being silenced. What happened next was not about possession. It was about rhythm. It was the give and take of breath in the darkness, the brush of skin, the quiet murmur of reassurance. It was his hands, learning the shape of her and hers, discovering the strength he held in check. It was a slow, careful joining, a synchronization of two people who had lived on opposite sides of a mirror and were finally in the same space. It was anchored in the absolute respect he had shown her from the first moment, a foundation of consent that made the intimacy profound and safe. Later, they lay on her sofa, tangled in a thin blanket, the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a quiet, shared exhaustion. "I used to spend nights like this in emergency rooms," Naya said, her voice soft in the darkness, her head pillowed on his chest. "When my mom's insurance would lapse, I'd watch the residents, memorize the charts. I thought I could save her by knowing everything." "You're still doing it," he said, his hand stroking her hair. "You're still trying to know everything." "It's the only way I know how to fight." He was quiet for a long time. "When I was young, my father took me on his container ships. He told me power was owning the ship. I spent 10 years owning the ships." He shifted, his arm tightening around her. "I was wrong. I was on the bridge one night, in a storm. The sea was chaotic. The crew was terrified." He paused. "I calmed the captain. I got on the radio. I redirected 2 other ships away from the storm. True power isn't owning the ship. It's knowing the storm. It's making the people in the boat feel safe. It's what you do." Naya. The intimacy of the confession hung in the air, real and heavy. Naya turned, about to say something, when a phone vibrated on the coffee table. Not hers. Soren's. He snatched it, an unknown number, a video call. He accepted, holding the phone so they both could see. The image was grainy, blue-lit, Marisol Calder, frail and confused, strapped to a hospital gurney, an IV dripped into her arm. "Where is she?" Naya gasped, sitting up, the blanket falling. A new face swam into view, a man with a cruel, handsome smile. Cassian Pride. He was wearing surgical scrubs. "She's at a private facility, Palladium Health Group. They're taking excellent care of her. For now." "What do you want?" Soren's voice was ice. "Valente," Cassian smiled, a flash of white teeth. "I want what you've been hiding, the key to your whole invisible empire. Bring me Ledger 77, the real one. Bring it to me, or your safety coordinator gets to listen to her mother's final heartbeats." "Ledger 77, Naya repeated, the name feeling cold and heavy in the small apartment. The intimacy of the past hour had evaporated, replaced by the stark, cold reality of the war they were in. "What is it?" Soren was already dressing, the calm, contained fury returning to his eyes. "It's the foundation. It's not a financial book. It's a chain of custody ledger. Every container, every shell company, every hidden fund, every consulting fee paid to every official in this city for the last 20 years. It maps the creation of Valente Maritime." Naya felt a chill. "It's not a ledger, it's leverage, against everyone." "And against me," Soren affirmed, his voice flat. "If Cassian Pride gets that document, he doesn't just damage me. He implodes the entire Valente structure. He takes the port." "He doesn't want to just take the port," Naya said, her mind racing, connecting the dialysis machines to Palladium Health Group. "He wants to replace you. He's building a rival infrastructure. He wants the ledger to do it cleanly." "Then we give him one," she said, her voice hard. Soren paused, his gaze searching her face. "The mirror play," Naya said. "The plan was forming, sharp and clear. He wants data, we'll give him data. We built a fake Ledger 77, a copy so perfect it looks identical." "A forgery of that scale?" "Not a forgery, a simulation," Naya corrected, her diagnostic mind clicking into gear. "Ria Solis can build it. We feed it ghost data virtual container IDs, randomized payment codes, all routed through a shell server. We'll even embed the data for those musical instrument containers he already found. Make him feel smart." Soren saw it instantly. "The Sentinel port system." "Exactly. Our internal port security protocol. The moment he tries to cross-reference or activate any of the ghost data in that ledger, Sentinel port tags his IP, his hardware, and every corresponding route in his network. He won't just be accessing a file, he'll be activating a trace." The team assembled on the 13th floor within the hour. The air was electric. Rhea Solis, the stoic CFO, listened to Naya's proposal and nodded once. It will take 12 hours. I can build the data trap. Cam Lax, the DJ, cracked his knuckles. I'll build the legend. A media whisper of a network upgrade at the port. Plausible deniability for any data surges. Milo Hawk, his arm in a fresh sling from the sniper's glass, stood by the door. My team and I will be on the perimeter, invisible. He won't see us until it's too late. I'll make the exchange, Naya said. No, Soren said instantly. It has to be me, Naya insisted, her voice leaving no room for argument. He took my mother. He thinks I'm your weakness. If you show up, he'll see a trap. If I show up, he'll see a desperate daughter. I am the only one he will believe. Soren stared at her, the muscle in his jaw tight. I will be your shadow. You will not be out of my sight, not for a second, when Naya initiated the negotiation. Cassian answered the next video call, his smile infuriatingly calm. I have the terms of the exchange, Naya said, her voice cold. I have the terms. Little bird, you bring the book. You prove she's alive. Not a recording. I want 3 video calls, 6 p.m., 9 p.m., and midnight on each call. She will hold up a different newspaper from today, and I want the shot wide. I want to see the room. Cassian laughed. You're in no position. If I don't see her, if I don't see the room, you get nothing. You get a public announcement about Palladium Health Group and a fleet of dialysis machines. You want your empire. Cassian, you play by my rules, 6 p.m. She hung up. The 6 p.m. call came. Marisol, terrified, held the Harrow Ridge Tribune. Naya studied the background. A concrete wall, a single, high, grimy window. The 9 p.m. call, Marisol held the Evening Post. The light from the window was different, a blue-white fluorescent glow from a building opposite. Naya analyzed the 2 images on the large screen. Cam, the angle of the light from the first call. Sunset. It's hitting her from the west, the second light. That's the floodlight from the Harrow Ridge Opera House. She's in the abandoned building across the street, the old Lyric Theater Annex. The final call came, this time from a different number. It wasn't Cassian. It was Morel Quaid. Her face was calm, her painted smile in place. She was in the room with Marisol. Just a final check-in, darling, Morel purred. Cassian is so busy. He asked me to handle the final details. As Morel moved the phone, Naya caught the faint, acrid smell she'd clocked at the glass-light launch, the iodine, the chemical used to bypass the refrigeration sensors. Morel, Naya said, her voice a mask of ice. It was always you. Palladium Health Group is yours. Morel laughed, a light, tinkling sound. A girl has to have a hobby. Wine doesn't pay that well. The Lyric Theater, center stage, 1 hour, bring the ledger, come alone. The Lyric Theater was a cathedral of decay, smelling of dust, mold, and wet plaster. Naya walked alone across the vast, empty stage, the heels of her boots echoing in the oppressive silence. She carried a single, heavy, leather-bound book. High above, in the catwalks, Cam had hacked the stage lighting grid. A single, dim spotlight followed her. Cassian Pride emerged from the orchestra pit, flanked by 2 men, the star of the show. Where is she? Naya demanded. Show me. Naya placed the ledger on a broken prop drum. Cassian opened it. His eyes scanned the meticulous, forged entries. He smiled. Beautiful. He handed it to one of his men. Check it. As the man pulled out a laptop to plug in the data drive embedded in the ledger's spine, Naya looked up. The stage lights, they weren't just dim, they were pulsing, a slow, steady, repeating pattern. ... SOS. It was a signal for Soren's team, confirming the exchange was in progress and pinpointing her location on the stage. It's good, the text said. On the 13th floor, Rhea Solis watched her screen. He's in... Sentinel port is active. The main monitor lit up like a diseased nervous system. Red lines, dozens of them streaked across the map of Harrow Ridge, pinpointing every Arkan asset, every safe house, every routing number tied to the ghost data. "We have them," Riaz said. "On the stage?" Cassian nodded, satisfied. "A pleasure, Naya." He raised his hand. "Now," Naya said. "My mother—" Cassian pointed to the wings. "Across the hall, 3rd floor, room 307. Naya didn't wait. She ran. She bolted from the stage, Milo's team swarming in from the main entrance behind her. A wave of black-clad tactical security. Naya sprinted up the concrete stairs, taking them 2 at a time, her heart hammering against her ribs. She hit the 3rd floor landing and ran down the decaying hallway, her eyes fixed on the number 307. She was 10 feet away when a door opened in front of her. Morel Quaid stepped out, blocking the path. Morel's smile was thin, sharp as a razor, her eyes glittering with a cold amusement. She held a small, silver pistol, aimed not at Naya's head, but at her center mass. "You are always the prettiest piece on the board, Naya," Morel said, her voice a low, silky thing. "Such a shame to break you." A bright, deafening flash lit the narrow hallway. The flash was blinding, the sound a deafening crack in the enclosed concrete hallway. Naya flinched, but the impact never came. Milo Hawk was suddenly there, his body slammed between her and Morel. He grunted, a wet, sharp sound. As the bullet found his already injured shoulder, this time sinking deep, he staggered, but his eyes, blazing with adrenaline, found Naya's. "Go!" he rasped, shoving her hard toward the door. "Get your mother! Go!" He slumped against the wall, but his hand was already reaching for his own sidearm. Morel raised her pistol again, her smile twisting into a snarl, but Naya was already moving. Her mind had gone cold and clear. She didn't run. She reacted. She grabbed the heavy, red fire extinguisher from its wall mount, yanked the pin, and aimed the nozzle not at Morel, but at the space between them. A thick, choking cloud of white chemical foam filled the hallway. A sudden, blinding fog. Morel cursed, firing blind. Naya heard the bullet whine off the concrete where she had been. Through the mist, Naya saw a prop cart, one left to rot, piled with debris from the theater's last show. Her eyes landed on a heavy, weighted object of vintage, all-metal cocktail shaker, part of an old bar set. She grabbed it, its weight solid in her hand. She hurled it with all her strength through the dispersing foam, aiming for the last place she'd seen Morel's arm. A sharp metallic clang and a scream of pain. The pistol clattered to the floor. A shadow moved through the fog from the stairwell. It was Soren. He moved like a phantom, silent and lethal. He passed Naya without a word, his own weapon drawn, but he didn't aim it at Morel, who was clutching her shattered wrist. He kicked her pistol away. Morel stared at him, her face a mask of hate and surprise. Soren lowered his gun. From his belt, he pulled a single, heavy-duty nylon zip tie. He grabbed her good arm, wrenched it behind her back, and secured her wrists with a vicious pull. "You're not going to kill me," Morel spat, her voice tight with pain. Soren looked down at her, his face devoid of all emotion. "I won't make you an excuse," he said, his voice cold as the grave. He left her there, bound on the floor, and turned to Naya. "Room 307? Down in the main theater. Cassian Pride heard the security team storming the lobby. He abandoned his men, sprinting for the service ladder that led to the roof. He was halfway up when the entire theater was plunged into darkness, followed by a single, blindingly bright spotlight hitting him like a physical blow. Cam, from his mobile hub in a van 2 blocks away, had taken control of the theater's ancient follow spot. Cassian was pinned, a perfect target on the catwalk. "Got you," Cam whispered. The light not only illuminated Cassian, it flashed upward, pinpointing the sniper's nest he'd established on the roof. Milo's perimeter team, watching from the opera house, had their target. Naya kicked open the door to room 307. The smell hit her first, the sharp, unmistakable scent of phenol, a heavy-duty antiseptic. It was an old sterilization room, its green-tiled walls cracked and peeling. Marisol was on a gurney in the corner, her eyes wide with terror, the IV still in her arm. "Mom, Naya ran to her, her hands fumbling with the leather restraints. "It's okay. I'm here. I'm here." Marisol grabbed her, her fingers surprisingly strong. "Naya, that woman," she said. "It doesn't matter," Naya said, pulling the IV from her arm, her medical training taking over, applying pressure to the vein. She found her mother's shoes under the gurney and jammed them onto her feet. "We're going home." She half lifted, half dragged her mother from the room, relief and rage warring in her chest, a sound bubbling up that was half a sob, half a laugh. Soren met them at the stairwell. "They're blowing the building." As if cued by his words, a low, deep whoomp vibrated from the foundation. Cassian had set charges. The building groaned, dust and concrete raining from the ceiling. Marisol stumbled, her legs giving way. Soren didn't hesitate. He scooped Marisol up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. Naya led. "This way," she commanded. Pulling a small, high-powered fluorescent marker from her pocket, she clicked it on. It was a blacklight. On the grimy walls, a path of symbols she had drawn earlier, based on the building's fire escape plans, glowed a brilliant spectral green. She had been preparing for this. They moved through the shaking, collapsing service tunnels, Soren carrying Marisol, Naya clearing the path until they burst through a set of double fire doors into the alleyway. The night air was filled with chaos. Not just sirens, the bright, flashing strobes of news cameras. Rhea Solis had done her work. A source had leaked an anonymous tip about a major philanthropic incident at the Lyric Theater, tied to the new Glasslight initiative. The press had arrived in force. The remaining Arcan gunmen, trapped between Milo's team and a wall of journalists, were forced to surrender. They couldn't shoot their way out. It was no longer a shadow war. It was a public spectacle. As Milo's men dragged a bound and furious Morel from the alley, she locked eyes with Soren. She was still smiling, despite the pain. "You're a fool, Soren," she hissed, just loud enough for him and Naya to hear. "They didn't need the ledger, they just needed you. They needed you to break cover." Before Soren could react, two black, unmarked SUVs screeched to a halt, cutting them off. The doors flew open and men in dark suits, wearing IIO insignias, fanned out, their weapons drawn but held low. A man in a sharp government-issue suit stepped out of the lead vehicle. He was calm, with intelligent, assessing eyes that missed nothing. He didn't look at Cashin's men. He didn't look at Morel. He looked straight at Soren Valente. He held up a badge. "Interstate Integrity Office," he said, his voice carrying clearly over the din. "Agent Zev Rowan. We've been hunting the Arkan Syndicate for a long time." His gaze flicked to Soren, cold and appraising. "And you, Mr. Valente, you've just become a person of significant interest." The chaos of the alleyway solidified into the sterile silence of an interrogation room, not at a police precinct, but in a high-floor, soundproofed office in the federal building. Agent Zev Rowan sat opposite Soren and Naya. Marisol was safe, heavily guarded by Milo's men in a new, secure wing of the Ether Clinic. Rowan placed a tablet on the table. It showed the Sentinel port data the glowing red network of Arcan's operations, captured from Rhea's server. "This," Rowan said, his voice a calm, professional monotone, "is the most comprehensive map of the Arcan Syndicate ever assembled. It's a gift. You're holding Cashin Pride in your basement vault, and you've handed us his entire network on a platter." "A problem solved," Soren said, his voice equally flat. "Almost," Rowan countered. "You used a proprietary, unregistered surveillance system Sentinel port to gather this. You are Valente Maritime. We have a file on you as thick as that fake ledger. You are, at best, a rival criminal enterprise that just did us a favor." He leaned forward. "So here is the offer. We call it a temporary protective umbrella. You hand over Pride, you hand over Morel Quaid, and you give us the keys to the Sentinel port system. In exchange, the Interstate Integrity Office will deprioritize its investigation into Valente Maritime for a period of 18 months. 18 months, an expiration date. During that time, Rowan continued, you will transition the Halcyon Vault into a fully legitimate entertainment venue. You will clean your books. After 18 months, the umbrella closes. We will be watching. It's the only deal on the table. Soren looked at Naya. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were clear. He was going to take it, to protect her, to get her out. He was willing to accept a timer on his own destruction. No, Naya said. Rowan and Soren both looked at her. Rowan's expression was one of mild annoyance, Soren's of sharp surprise. Agent Rowan, Naya said, her voice as steady as his, that isn't a deal. That's a suspended sentence. You're not offering protection, you're offering a leash. The moment that 18 months is up, every rival you haven't caught, and probably a few you have, will tear Mr. Valente apart to see what scraps are left. You'll be watching him, and they'll be hunting him. It turns him into a sitting target. Rowan leaned back, impressed despite himself. And you have a counter-proposal, Miss Calder. We have, Naya said, placing her hands flat on the table. A 3-pillar compact, not a temporary deal, but a permanent strategic alignment. She held up one finger. Pillar 1. We give you Cassian Pride, Morel Quaid, and the entire Palladium Health Group infrastructure we've uncovered. We give you the dialysis machine manifests, the supply chains, not just the network, but the crime. She held up a second finger. Pillar 2. We give you the Sentinel port system, but not as a locked Valente asset. We scrub every line of code that traces back to Valente Maritime, and we turn it over to the IIO as an open-source port security tool. You can deploy it nationally. You get the win, you get the technology, and we are permanently decoupled from it. Soren's eyes widened slightly. She was giving away his most powerful weapon. Pillar 3, Naya finished. The Glasslight Initiative. My foundation will co-sponsor a federal victims rehabilitation program. Funded by the assets seized from Palladium Health, we provide the public face for the port's cleanup. You get the bust, the tech, and the good press. Rowan was silent for a long time, his fingers steepled. That's a bold play, Miss Calder. You're asking me to legitimize a known criminal enterprise. I'm asking you to use us to cut out cancer, Naya said. Archon isn't just moving contraband, they're laundering human lives. They're building lists of patients, leveraging their illnesses. That's not a shadow war. That's a blood debt. I can't take that to a prosecutor without hard proof, Rowan said. Morel's signature, Naya said. The iodine. It's a potassium iodide compound used to fake chemical signatures in their refrigeration units. It's also used in their medical labs to falsify patient test results. It's the chemical signature of Palladium Health Group. It's on the dialysis machines. It's on the fake patient records. It's the blood proof you need. Rowan stared at her, a slow smile spreading across his face. You're not a floor manager. You're a prosecutor. He stood. I'll take your compact to my director, but I want one more thing. I want Morel Quaid. I want her testimony. That night, dinner was a silent, heavy affair in Soren's apartment. He had cooked simple pasta, but they barely ate. He watched her across the table, not as his employee, not as the woman he had held in his arms, but as a strategist who had just saved his empire by giving away its crown jewel. He was immensely, terrifyingly proud, and he was afraid that in saving him, she had proven she was destined for the light world he had just been forced to enter, a world where he could not follow. They stood on the balcony later, the cold November air sharp between them. You gave away the Sentinel, he said, his voice low. You disarmed me, Naya. I cut the chain, she answered, not looking at him, watching the lights of the harbor. That system was your prison as much as it was your weapon. Now, you're free of it. You can build something real. And you, he asked, his voice raw, will you stay for that? Or will you join Rowan's world, the light? Naya turned to him. I'm not interested in the light, Soren. I'm interested in the people who get lost in the shadows, the ones like my mother. I'm staying right here, on the edge of the dark, where I can do the most good. The call came from Rowan the next day. Morel Quaid, facing 2 decades of racketeering charges, had made a deal. She would testify. She would provide what she called the PRISM list, a complete roster of the fake doctors and compromised clinicians working for Palladium. In exchange, she wanted protective custody and a chance at a new life. The IAO accepted the 3-pillar compact. The handoff was arranged. Cassian Pride, bound and hooded, was loaded into a high-security IEO transport vehicle. Rowan shook Naya's hand. "It's over, Miss Calder. Welcome to the light." An hour later, Soren's private phone rang. He put it on speaker. It was Rowan, his voice stripped of its professional calm. "He's gone." "What?" Naya said. "Pride. The transport was hit. It was an inside job. A mole. Someone on my team. He's in the wind." As if on cue, Naya's personal phone, the one Cassian had contacted before, lit up with a text message. A new number. 1 line of text. "The Glasslight Gala is a beautiful idea. The glass bridge. Midnight, bring Valente to me. Make him confess publicly, and your mother will live to see the sunrise. Fail, and I'll push her off it myself." The Glasslight Gala was, by Harrow Ridge standards, a masterpiece of public relations. It was held on the city's newly dedicated Glass Bridge, an architectural marvel of steel and reinforced panes spanning the mouth of the harbor. A string quartet played. Lights like captive stars glittered overhead, and the city's elite mingled, sipping champagne. Naya, poised and articulate at the central podium, was the face of the new, legitimate Valente organization. Soren Valente was just another guest in a dark suit, standing near the edge of the crowd, a shadow watching his creation bloom in the light. Naya felt the slight vibration against her skin. She was wearing a state-of-the-art bone conduction microphone, ostensibly for the presentation, but Cam had, at her request, patched the mic's clean feed directly into the bridge's main PA system. Any word she spoke, any call she took, would be heard by everyone. It was a trap made of sound. The music stopped abruptly at 5 minutes to midnight. A high-pitched whine filled the air as a commercial drone hovered over the center of the bridge, its spotlight pinning Naya. Then, walking through the panicked crowd, came Cassian Pride. He was immaculate in a white dinner jacket, his smile wide and theatrical. In his left hand, he held a dead man's switch, a small black detonator. "A beautiful party, Naya!" His voice boomed, broadcast from the drone, a perfect stage for the final act. "It's over, Cassian," Naya said, her voice shaking just enough to be believable, but clear and loud over the PA system. "The IEO has your network." "You think this is about the network?" he laughed. "This is about the legend, and you, my dear, are the climax." He held up the detonator. "This bridge is wired, but first, the confession. Where is Valente? I want him on his knees. I want him to confess his sins to the city, right before I cleanse it." "You want a confession," Naya said, her voice suddenly hardening, losing the tremor. She stepped away from the podium. "Let's talk about yours." On the massive LED screens behind her, meant to be showing the Glasslight Initiative's logo, a new image appeared. It was the deed of sale for Palladium Health Group, signed by Cassian. Then, a video feed of the dialysis machines. And finally, scrolling slowly, the PRISM list Morel had provided. The names of the sick, the elderly, the vulnerable, all marked for exploitation. The crowd gasped. Cassian's smile faltered. "Give me Valente," he roared, his thumb tightening on the switch. "I'm here." Soren Valente stepped out from the crowd, his hands empty, held away from his body. He walked calmly toward the center of the bridge, stopping between Cassian and Naya. "You want me?" "Cassian, you're right. It's my fault. Let them go. If you want an ending, let me walk you off this stage, alive." Sirens wailed from both ends of the bridge. Zev Rowan and a team of IEO agents, clad in black tactical gear, were moving in, boxing them in. "Nobody moves," Cassian screamed, panicked. Rowan advanced, his weapon trained. "It's done. Pride." But Naya wasn't watching Cassian. She was watching Rowan's team. One man, on Rowan's left flank, was hanging back, his hand near his holster. On his wrist, catching the light, was a woven black bracelet set with a single, polished chip of iridescent, dark stone, iodine, the color, the sheen. It was the exact chemical signature she'd seen, the mole. Agent Rowan, Naya's voice boomed over the PA, freezing everyone. Check your man, the one on your left. Ask him why he's wearing an iodine quartz bracelet, the same signature as the Palladium Labs. Rowan stopped. He looked at his agent. The man's face went white. Cassian, seeing his exit route collapse, seeing the betrayal, screamed. Then it all burns. He slammed his thumb down on the detonator. A deafening click, and then whoomph! It was not an explosion. From beneath the bridge, where Cassian's charges had been planted, a series of bright, glittering flares shot into the sky. Cold spark fountains, the kind used in concerts. Naya's backstage crew had found and replaced every single charge. The glass bridge erupted not in fire, but in a dazzling, harmless shower of silver and gold. The crowd, believing it was part of the show, burst into applause. Cassian stared, his mind broken. In that moment of stunned silence, a figure stepped from the IIO blockade. It was Morel, in a simple dress, flanked by 2 agents. She was the star witness. Final proof, Naya's voice commanded. Morel took a microphone and read a single, long account number. That is the final transfer from the Arcan Syndicate through Palladium Health to a shell account owned by Cassian Pride. It's done. As Rowan's loyal agents tackled the stunned Cassian, the mole, the internal IEO agent, saw his life ending. He acted on instinct. He raised his sidearm, ignoring Naya, ignoring Rowan, aiming directly at the man who had caused it all. Soren? Soren, Naya screamed. She didn't push him. She didn't hesitate. She launched herself at him, her arms wrapping around his chest, her body shielding him, her head tucked low. The shot cracked, deafeningly loud, but there was no impact. The bullet went wide, shattering a high-tensile support wire above their heads, raining sparks down. Soren held her, his arms crushing her to him, his heart hammering against her ear. He was shaking, for the first time since she had met him. Soren Valente was terrified. He wasn't afraid of the bullet. He was afraid of losing her. The aftermath was quiet. The IIO accepted the 3-pillar compact. Valente Maritime was voluntarily dissolved, its assets either seized by the government or absorbed into the Glasslight Initiative. The Halcyon Vault was permanently closed, its steel doors locked. Marisol Calder, recovering at home, became the chief patient advocate for the Ether Clinic. Weeks later, the old vault was being renovated. It was no longer a place of shadows, but a community theater and a support center for the Glasslight Foundation. Naya was in the empty main rehearsal hall, the smell of fresh paint and warm wood replacing the old scent of gin. She was wiping down the last of the new seats. She heard footsteps on the new floor. Soren was standing in the doorway, watching her. He was in a simple shirt, no suit. "They're finished," Naya said, her voice soft. He walked toward her, stopping a few feet away. The last of the old cargo ships was sold this morning. "Are you free, Soren?" He looked at her, the steel in his eyes replaced by a warmth she had only seen in glimpses. Almost. He took the final step, closing the distance. "I'm asking you to stay. Naya, not as my safety coordinator, not as my shadow, as my partner." Naya looked up at him. She touched his face, her fingers tracing the jawline she now knew so well. She smiled. "I'm not going anywhere." He bent his head and kissed her. It was slow and deep and final. It was not the desperate, panicked kiss in her mother's kitchen. It was a promise of peace, a vow of equality. The rehearsal room door swung quietly shut, leaving them alone in the warm light, their laughter and soft footsteps echoing on the new hardwood floor. The next morning, the sun rose over Harrow Ridge. A new sign was being mounted on the old club, the Glasslight. The first rays of light hit the letters, refracting, casting small, glittering rainbows on the pavement below. On the harbor wall, 2 people stood close, Hands clasped, Soren looked at the key in his other hand, the heavy, skeleton key to the original Halcyon strong room. He let it fall from his grasp, watching it disappear into the dark water, cutting the last tie to the man he had been. Thank you so much for listening to our story. We'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts and connect with other listeners. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Story, like the video, and give us a boost by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.